Welcome to Young Money with Tracy Bissett, the advice show for young millionaires in the making. It's time for some $1 Million Straight Talk with Tracy, President and Chief Financial Fitness Trainer at Bissett Financial Fitness. Each week, Tracy's going to tell you what you need to know now at the beginning of your earning curve. Basic and advanced financial concepts made clear, healthy money habits and the missteps to avoid, and all the stuff that you can do to set yourself up for a future of fantastic financial freedom. Ready to lace up and start this week's financial fitness training? Let's do it, Tracy.
Welcome to the Young Money Podcast. I'm really delighted today we have a very special guest, Susan Diaz. Welcome to the show, Susan.
Thank you for having me, Tracy.
Well, it's so great to have you. And Susan is the founder and chief content strategist of C+P Digital, a digital marketing agency with strong focus on delivering effective content as a tool for conversion. Susan has a grown-up human's amount of experience in content on every side of the marketing table, advertising, broadcast, corporate, digital long before it became required reading. She began her full-time entrepreneurial journey in 2011 as a new mom and recent immigrant to Canada, and has grown C+P to a communication consultancy with deep niche knowledge in finance, technology, and health. Susan is big on building dream teams, and her team vision involves blurring the lines between agency and client, creating a model that brings senior talent together in a way that prioritizes flexibility, accountability, and growth. So welcome again, Susan.
Thank you, Tracy. I really like your podcast. I listen to it all the time, and I love your name for the podcast in particular.
Oh, thank you. I like it too. So it gets me energized, and I'm really excited at the thought of all those future millionaires out there, those millionaires in the making. So you're here to help us get some more knowledge, potentially some more tools so that we can help them on their journey. So it's fantastic. So now that I've read your formal bio, I'd love if you can tell us just a little bit more about yourself and really kind of the nature of your entrepreneurial journey and how you got started in your business.
Right. So I run a digital marketing agency, and we're heavily focused on simplification. Now, what does that mean? I think the problem that we're trying to fix is the fact that when we talk to clients, whether they're at one end of the spectrum in the larger corporates or all the way on the other end of the spectrum with smaller businesses, what they seem to share in terms of an experience is how complicated marketing's gone, how it's full of players. There's no real definitive ability to sort of measure the marketing and what the return on investment is. And that kind of is what we set out to solve. We aim to challenge that notion, really, that it doesn't need to be hard, right? So our focus is on content, like you said, that focuses heavily on conversion. So if you actually put something out there, be aware of what it's doing for you, and do more of what works and less of what doesn't. Really, it sounds simple, and it can it can be, but what that means in today's digital world is, as you know, as the creator of a podcast, is like putting out content which is really relevant, useful information, right? And then using that to understand the consumer's behaviors. What do they need? What are they liking? And that in the end is what creates simplified marketing in our belief. And that is what we try to deliver. So the people who kind of have interest in this kind of thinking or this approach to marketing are interestingly on the very ends of that spectrum, either the large businesses like the investment houses and the banks, or the smaller players in the 250K space who are really looking to scale and do something agile and interesting with themselves. And I guess in terms of business model, what we've done here is it's kind of rooted in the consultancy kind of model, to which I think, I've brought a few interesting customizations that work, both for us and our goals. One of them is on the value creation front. So the value we deliver is heavily is driven by our agility. So what we really do is offer senior level marketing talent who's able to plug and play. And what that allows the corporate to do is increase their bandwidth, right? So often you have, in this disruptive world, you have people getting hit with something new, something innovative, like let's launch this, let's do this. That kind of stuff is not always sustainable with internal teams. And something like the model that we offer helps corporate to rise to that need for agility in the face of constant innovation. So that's one. And the second part, I guess, is on the delivery front, which is that we're pretty asset light on multiple levels.
Mm-hmm.
The first of those is the fact that our operation is heavily virtual. So we have teams in different parts. We don't really have a need for an office from that perspective. And while I do have goals from a business perspective to invest in real estate, right now there's no reason to pay rent and have an office. So we don't, right? And that translates to the bottom line in a sense, and allows us to price ourselves appropriately. So that's the first of the things. And the second is, even in terms of salaries, we keep it asset light. So what that means is that early in the journey of growing this business and taking it from one person to many people, came the question of like, who can I hire and what can I afford? And I guess the answer to that was, I need senior talent. I can't really afford to hire them all full time. So it needs to be some type of contractor model. So that's the direction I went in, and I continue to operate in at this point. And the reason for that is, like, I mean, I put a retainer in place with these people. So there's commitment in the process. And that allows me to have access to the people I need at the senior level. It allows them that hunter farmer thing. Some people don't like getting their own business, so I've found the talent that works with this model, and so it stays asset light heavily. So that allows me to use agility on both ends, really, to deliver a consultancy model.
Well, that sounds great. So I've heard a few things that I like. One, even though you didn't use the words, you're very focused on your cash flow and making sure you're profitable. So designed a business that didn't have too much overhead, but still gave you the flexibility to deliver excellent services. So I think that's wonderful, and keeping that bottom line in mind the whole time that you were going through.
And I don't know that I would have been able to articulate that in the early stages at all, but I had a clear understanding of, if $1 comes in, how much of it goes out, what is taxes, those kind of things. And knowing that just because you sold $1 worth of goods of any type, you're not actually going to be having that dollar in your pocket a little bit later. And that applies more to us as entrepreneurs, I guess, than someone who has like a fixed paycheck. But, 100%, it's something you need to consider, the cash flow.
For sure. And for people who are not marketing experts like me, digital marketing is marketing using digital channels. Is that accurate?
Yes, 100%. And I know that at one point it was a part of the mix where you were doing brands would do some advertising, they would have PR, they would have a number of channels, and digital was one of them. Now it's pretty much the language of the times, isn't it? It's like using a pen back in 20 years ago. It's like, it's the medium of delivery. So digital would cover off everything from like your own assets, like your website, and, any spaces in which you're hosting content that are not your actual website, whether that's an e-commerce platform or any of that, all of the material that goes with it, all of the experience that's delivered with it for the customers. That's one part of it. Obviously, social media, which is more of a communication on the outside. It's how you distribute the stuff that you've built. So that's covered off. And obviously it goes deeper into the measurement of things, and being able to set yourself up with tools and the things that actually allow you to know, both run the marketing as well as know if that marketing is working, right? So that's sort of the spectrum that a digital marketing agency would offer you. The same sort of things would be offered as a traditional agency in terms of the appropriate messaging and the appropriate visual creative and various other production things also obviously go with it, because that's part of the delivery process.
Excellent. Well, I just wanted to clarify and make sure that I understood, and that anybody who's listening could visualize what that looks like. So thank you so much. Now, when I read your bio, I mentioned that you were a recent immigrant to Canada in 2011. I'd love it if you could share your journey of coming to Canada and things you noticed, things that happened to you, and kind of your overall perspective on it.
Yeah. So my family and we moved here about 10 years ago, and I want to share some personal details just to hopefully it resonates with your listeners in terms of some of the experiences that we tend to have. So I was born in India, and my parents were sort of adventurous of spirit, and they lived in Tanzania. So that's where I grew up. And then along the way, life sort of took me to different places. We went back to India, and then I moved to the Middle East. And so that was really where thinking about Canada started. I met my husband there, and he, had family in Canada, and that was part of his plan. So quite early, he spoke to me about this as a thought, and he was like, "Do you think this is a plan that we can both sort of do together?" And so I was like, "It sounds perfectly logical." And in terms of the experience, why this is an option for so many people in the Middle East, I believe, like in Dubai in particular, which is where I was at the time, there are a lot of people who move there for one socio-economic reason or another. Whether from the Asian subcontinent or South Africa or Europe, there are a lot of people who've moved there, and then it's good. You've got good jobs, you have a good life, and so you stay. But you're there by virtue of a work permit. So after you've been there for a while, comes the question sort of what's next, right? So do you want to go back to your country? Do you want to go somewhere else? And I think that was the kind of question that we were faced with at the time. And so we chose to move here because here's what I think. I think that if you moved out of your space and got a job somewhere else to begin with, you're adventurous.
Yes.
And when you're adventurous, you look for the next adventure. So that kind of brought us here to Canada. I mean, the only thing I think at the time that we thought about and we're like, oh my God, can we manage that, was like sub-zero temperatures.
Yes.
Because we lived in the desert at times. And so we're like, we can handle one extreme, we can handle the other.
And when you first arrived, did you come to Toronto or did you live somewhere else?
Yes. We first came here, and we despite many people telling us that it's going to be hard. I don't want to say hard, but it's going to be challenging. Moving lives and settling in somewhere comes with like a lot of aspects. Financial is a big part of it. So when we actually came in here, we were like, we thought we'd get a job right away. Obviously, that did not happen. So we went on a little journey of trying to discover what it is that we want at that point. It was especially challenging for us because we had senior jobs when we left Dubai. We came in here, we took a look at what the options were, and we were like, at this point in our lives, both of our careers are on an up where we are, and it makes a lot of sense to stay where we are and save a little bit more for the future, so that we'll be able to go to Canada with a little bit of money or a little bit of padding in our bank account, if you will. So that's kind of the route we went with. We came in here and we did all of our paperwork, and then you're allowed a certain number of away days as part of the immigration. So we went back and we stayed in our jobs, and we, put away that money, and then we moved here. So that made us it cushioned us, if you will.
Yeah, I really like that because certainly there would have been unexpected costs, and you didn't know the labor market, so you weren't sure exactly how long it was going to take to find work, or in your case, start your own business.
Yeah. And I believe that the business starting as well is a, let's call it a happy accident, because again, I went on a lot of, consultant meetings and a number of, like, shall we call it, blind business coffee dates with people to try and find a job. And I was discovering that, like, perhaps an expectation versus reality, and just the real fact that when you come into a market, you don't know it. And yes, people are not allowed to hold that against you, but you must educate yourself and make yourself sort of fill any gaps, right? So that's kind of what I started to do. And along the way, there was a failed business because I was like, okay, if I can do anything and I'm doing nothing at this point, what would I do? So I applied some of my creative talent and past experience to starting a business in chocolate making, interestingly. And that while that had nothing to do with my career, it was just me saying, let's try everything and being open to trying everything. That didn't really go well, but what it did teach me is a couple of things. One is, it's like, you got to be clear about applying your highest talent and using that to be your business, bread and butter, as opposed to being like, oh, I like making chocolates, and here I'll sell this for $2 a piece for the rest of my life, and I still won't make minimum wage, right? So, so that's kind of those were the learnings I had, and then we took that, and I was like, what can we do? This is what I know how to do, and people wouldn't give me perhaps like a full-time job, but they were willing to give me projects. So that's kind of where the entrepreneurial journey started for me. I took on the projects. One project became 2, became 5, and then it led to the rest.
Well, that's fantastic. And certainly I hear you when you say it was a challenge and lots of things to learn. Certainly you were adventurous and you were ready for the adventure. And certainly you've achieved a lot of success to date in your career and in your entrepreneurial journey. I've heard some of the factors as you've been talking, but I'd love it if you could share a few themes or what you consider to be key success factors in your life that have brought you to where you are today.
I'd say one is creating that cushioning. I don't think that we fully anticipated how much perhaps was needed to sustain the life that you want while you settle into a new country,
Mm-hmm.
right? So coming here with like a certain amount of money, which we focused on putting away both through our lives as we sort of got better jobs and things like that, as well in that focused 2 years that we went back and we were like, the goal is to go there. And if the goal is to go there, then every extra bit of money is going into the savings account. And we created that little cushioning for ourselves. So that's definitely one, I'd say. The second thing that I'd say is a consideration as far as we're concerned is the fact that I think I'm a planner as a
Mm-hmm.
professional. It's my job to build strategy for people, and I chose to apply that to my own life. It was not a happy accident that it just got along. I was like, yes, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make a strategic plan for myself. What do we need? We started at a vision board level and take it down to like, what do we want from the finance? What do you want from career? What do you want from the business? It's only when you lay out those factors and plan it that you can actually make them real. So that I think is a big success factor. It's a thing that I've talked to about with friends about how we
Mm-hmm.
spend some time at the end of the year just doing it for your own life, right? So planning is my second thing. Third thing I would say is just headspace. A lot comes from what you think and what's going on in your head, and call it mindset, whatever. But just being open to trusting yourself and being like, I know how to make enough, whatever that is. And it sounds a little woo woo, but essentially, I guess what I'm saying is that I always, in my case, knew that I could get good jobs. I could keep those good jobs. It was simply a matter of translating that to, I can do this in an entrepreneurial form. That's what I want right now. And the business will come. And then I started to take actions towards it, applying all of that planning and, definitely using some of that cash flow from that cushioning. And, that combined with the right headspace is what continues to take me where I want to go. Is it 100%? No, but we always look for the next step, right?
Absolutely. Well, I totally love that. I love that you talked about mindset. And certainly on the show, we've talked a lot about money mindset. And really what you were describing is what we've talked about as really that place of abundance where you feel like you can make it happen versus feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to have enough. So I think that's great. Love how you saved up to come, having that cushion. And I think that holds us in good stead no matter what we're doing. The vision board, I think, is excellent. And so if people haven't tried and they're listening, you should definitely look into that and give it a shot. Throughout some of the earlier stories, though, too, what I picked up is really your adventurous spirit, lifelong learner, and certainly your resilience and persistence to make things happen. So I think if anybody listening implements one or two or even all of these key success factors, I think that it will really help you as well. So thank you for sharing, and really like the candid stories that you shared to help with that, us understanding that.
Thanks, JC. It's really fun to chat about some of these aspects and piece it together into a larger picture.
Yeah, it's always interesting to hear the stories. And so I'm going to get you to think a little bit about a big turning point in your life from a financial perspective, or something you wish you'd known a little bit earlier in your life from a financial standpoint.
I think a turning point in my life was it goes back to that little point you made about being a lifetime learner. It was sort of understanding that money doesn't come from a job alone. And that's not necessarily to say entrepreneurship versus anything else. It's really early on, I worked with banks and insurance companies and things like that, and smart financial minds. And from them, I learned concepts like risk and investment, and how do you protect your money, and what is compound interest, and just really things like that, which I took away. And they're macro concepts, obviously, that's applied by the financial industry, but there's no reason why they can't be made small enough to apply on the individual level as well, right? So over the we touched on the fact that we found our opportunities to put away money every month.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, when you do that, like it seems little. And sometimes I'm really proud of myself when we made some of these decisions. We were in our 20s and early 30s. And that little bit that you put away, it adds up, right? I mean, on a monthly
Absolutely. Yeah.
basis. So this is what you want to hear as a financial advisor, right?
Yeah. And certainly, I mean, on the flip side, all those little purchases you're making that you're not really thinking about, $3 here, $5 there, $10, that all takes away from your ability to hit your goals. So your discipline towards the main goal, and building up that cushion, I mean, that's tremendous.
And that's where you can sort of like where the vision board comes back in, right? Like when we translate it to a thing in my company, I talked about how we're asset light. Now that doesn't mean that we don't have like the learning and development stuff that we need to do and the employee experience that I offer the people who work with us. It rivals some of the better programs out there. And how am I able to do that is really, I'm picking my price tag, right? I don't have real estate at this point that I'm paying rent for because I'm choosing to invest in intellectual property and developing that. So it's in the end, it's really all about going back to your vision and that clarity around where the dollars are best spent or where the dollars are best saved.
And certainly we've had a lot of great guests on the show. Kelly Keene talked to us a little bit about your future self and what do you want to do for your future self. And so I think making it into that vision board, as you described, makes it very tangible. What do I want my future self to be doing? And so it's almost like then you've got a commitment with that person you're going to become. So it makes it a little bit easier probably to sock away the money.
It sure does.
Yeah. And so, as you know, I teach many international students at Centennial College in a financial services program. And there's certainly young money listeners around the globe who are tuning in. From your experience, what success strategies can you share with those young millionaires in the making when moving to a new country from either a broad perspective, like for their life as a whole, things that they can do to make it successful, and then anything related to money that you can think of?
Yeah, sure. One of the things I'd say is trust your adventuring spirit overall. Don't let other people define your rules. When we came here, we had a lot of people saying to us, start at Starbucks and get into the system and as well live within your means. And while there's validity to all of that, our means at that point was zero. And we really had to pick what it is that we wanted. So like, don't let the voices get in your head or somebody else's blueprint for how they want to do it or how they did it 20 years ago get in the way of what you want. Trust your adventuring spirit. Like we said, if you're moving to a new place, you're already the greatest kind of adventurer. So if you think about it that way and you think about money and say that it doesn't have to be complicated, find what you like to do and find the people that will work with you and recognize that you have that value and keep your mind open, like we said, right? So on the dollars in front side, whether it's for employment or for entrepreneurship, I think it's important to identify that highest skill, which carries that highest price tag, right? And once you know what that is and what it's worth, then go get it. You don't have to settle. In our case, are we 100% where we want it to be at the end of this time? No, of course not. There's always the challenges, there's battles, there's demons in your head. But what we like to hold on to is the fact that we got this far. I run a 6-figure business. I employ people. My husband works in financial services. We got here, and the same energy is what's going to like take you forward, and you'll keep walking, taking that next step, right? So that's kind of that resilience, that word you use before, that resilience is what will take you wherever you want to go.
And what I also heard you say, but just to articulate it so it's crystal clear, like you had a plan, but you've also been flexible and not beat yourself up when you didn't quite hit the exact plan you had laid out.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you need to be flexible to be able to adjust. Now, you may have learned some things on your journey. So are there any potential missteps or mistakes that maybe you made or you've seen other people make that you'd like to share with the listeners so they can potentially avoid those ones if they're making the same kinds of moves?
I think not fully anticipating how long it would take us after we moved here to sort of stop dipping into our savings would be one that comes to mind. I've heard this with a couple of friends who've shared similar experiences, and definitely us. We've given the typical advice, which is you want to have a year or two worth of living expenses
Mm-hmm.
that you want to be, factoring away, and we did. But I'd argue that it might be more depending on what you want to do, right? So the reason for this is you want to try to avoid putting pressure on yourself and avoid having to take decisions to go back to the point you made, from a place of scarcity over abundance, because you have to, right? So plan, again, it goes back to planning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's being able to anticipate what's coming your way as best you can, but really having that backup plan in place. So I'd always say expect it to cost more than you think.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. So generally in business and usually anything in life, it's going to take longer than you think and it's going to cost more than you think it does. So two things you can kind of count on. And at that time, like certainly now in financial services, most of the big banks have some programs in place for new Canadians. I don't imagine that was the case at the time when you came.
No, no. I mean, I feel like we had no credit, firstly, and none of the credit counted from anywhere else. We paid insurance rates to drive cars, which were ridiculous. One of my favorite stories to tell is that we paid cash for a depreciating asset, our car, because it was just too expensive to access the credit and, pay for it over a longer period of time. So we had lots of those things which you had to, what shall I say, you had to navigate them as they came up. And you have good advice and counsel along the way. And, there's the system itself offers you a whole lot of mentorship and learning and things like that. So again, you got to be open to the learning and be like, what can I do to improve myself in this new environment each day, right? And you stay focused on that. And we got there in the end. Right now, I see that there's so much more stuff out there. But in the
Mm-hmm.
end, if you want it, you just go and find it. Like we found an international account that allowed us to have access to daily banking in a couple of different places. And obviously that helped towards our credit. So you got to look, you got to learn. It's a digital age. You've got information at the end of your fingertips. So that's really all I can say is look for that knowledge and gain it.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing is that when you do go look for the help or you look for the support, it's there. You just got to ask.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's another big one. You've got to make sure that you're asking and not feel kind of shy that people aren't going to help. So trust people and give them a chance to help you. Now, before I let you go, I'd love it if you can share some final pieces of advice or insights or anything you'd like to reiterate for the listeners.
There's a couple of things I wanted to talk about in terms of what you can be thinking about, especially if you're moving countries and things like that. The first is building strong relationships, being open to people, new ideas, sort of absorb and assimilate yourself because it's potentially different than the things that you're used to. And if you really get into it, I think it's all sorts of possibilities open up. A story I like to tell is about how my husband signed up for a mentorship program when we first came
Mm-hmm.
here, and he wanted to learn the ropes of the market. And a few others in his group at the time were assigned mentors along with him, and they were not in the same industry, and some of them chose to turn those down and wait for someone who's industry specific, which is a valid choice. But my husband went with the opposite route. Even though it was not the same industry, he went with it, and that was kind of how he got his job. We've stayed in contact with these people who brought with them counsel
Mm-hmm.
and introductions and ideas, which just so massively enhanced our life because we were open to relationships. So that's, I think, a big key thing. A second is a little bit of my entrepreneurial pet peeve, which
Okay.
is that which is some of the younger entrepreneurs, or just younger in terms of like your journey in entrepreneurship, even if you're a senior person, if you're a gigger, you tend to underprice yourself, right? The working premise is that so many of us are self-employed right now, and if that's the case, we need to be finding that value and pricing ourselves. Let's not be competing with the people on Fiverr. If you've got value that you need to offer and you've chosen to make a career for yourself out of self-employment, I think one of the things that I would definitely say is start to price yourself with respect.
I like that. Price yourself with respect. Very nice. Now, if people are interested in what you're working on next and where they can learn more about you, what details can you share with us now?
So it's kind of all about planning over here at C Digital, because we've got a nice round number coming up at us, 2020. So we're working on a couple of projects with larger businesses, and we're sort of simultaneously, we've scaled down some of our models to for strategic marketing simplification for small businesses. So you have access to a lot of that and lots of free content. Just hop onto our website. It's cp.digital. Yeah, .digital. It's not a .com. We get that a lot.
Absolutely. And we'll put the link in the show notes so people can just click on it really simply.
Yes, hop by and say hello. That'd be awesome.
Excellent. Well, that's so great. So thank you so much for joining me, Susan. I think that it's been a great discussion. I really appreciated the themes throughout all your stories. I think will lead people to success, because there's a lot of great success factors and things that you mentioned. I liked your perspective on thinking about your mindset, whether it be when you're going into new situations, whether it's about money, no matter what. Trusting your adventuring spirit as you're embarking on these adventures is really important, because you chose to make that journey for a reason. So I think that that's really great, and being open to learning, and then just not being hard on yourself, but giving yourself the time, because it's probably going to take longer. It's probably going to cost more than you expected. And if you are going into new country, you may have to navigate the financial system, which may be completely different than you're used to. So just be ready for that and ask for help if you need it. So I think people will be taking a lot away from the episode, as am I. So thanks so much again, Susan, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So there you have it, listeners. Susan Diaz, founder and chief content strategist of C+P Digital. So all her contact information is located in the show notes, and you can certainly hop on their website to find out more about her and her business. Until next time, take good care and stay financially fit.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. To all you millionaires in the making out there, if you love this podcast, please subscribe on iTunes to keep your financial fitness training going. Oh, and leave us a review. And be sure to visit 2 S's, 2 T's, financialfitness.com to take your free financial fitness assessment. Find out how financially fit you really are. See you next week, young millionaires to be.